Rowan is going to lead our next song, and everybody but Rowan, please mute. Okay, Rowan.
So last year, you may remember, we all sang Everybody's Got a Right to Live, and the campaign asked everybody to do videos of Everybody's Got a Right to Live. And we have this amazing playlist on YouTube. If you go to the Poor People's Campaign YouTube channel, there's a whole channel of Everybody's Got a Right to Live videos. And so this year they're asking for people to do a new unsettling force. And so I thought it would be good if we at least got to sing it together and, you know, we're familiar with it. We are a new unsettling force, and we are powerful, a new unsettling force, and we're here. We are a new unsettling force for liberation, and we've got nothing to lose but our chains, and we've got nothing to lose but our chains. We're a new unsettling force, and we are powerful, a new unsettling force, and we're here, a new unsettling force for liberation, and we've got nothing to lose but our chains, and we've got nothing to lose but our chains.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, that's how we begin our WILF meetings. I'd like to welcome everyone who has joined since we had our brief introduction. Tonight's meeting deals with the Poor People's Campaign. And our speaker tonight, our presenter, is Rowan Fairgrove. Rowan is one of 3 co-leaders of the local WILF branch, who has taken us to new heights in our engagement, or maybe it's depths, or maybe it's width. I don't know. It's all sorts of directions in our connections with so many things. And one of them currently has been the Poor People's Campaign. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce Rowan Fairgrove and her presentation, Poor People's Campaign and the Women in the Poor People's Campaign. So this is sign language for applause. So please welcome Rowan. There you go.
Yeah, I figured, you know, I've done this, I think the 4th presentation on the Poor People's Campaign I've done for WILF San Jose in the last 3 years. And so I couldn't tell you about the history. I've already told you about that. I will tell you about what we're doing right now, but I'm not going to tell you what we've been doing in between because I told you that. So I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, hopefully you can now see just the slide of the Women of the Poor People's Campaign, 1967 to present. So everybody talks about Martin Luther King started it and Reverend Barber picked it up, but it didn't take 2 people to do the Poor People's Campaign. There are millions of us, 140 million poor and low wealth people before the pandemic. And so I'd like to share some of the amazing women who have worked to make the campaign what it is today and in the 1960s. So these are the women I'm going to feature from the 1968 campaign. There are, of course, many more, but hey, we don't have that much time. So Marian Wright, later Marian Wright Edelman, was intent on evaluating the impact of President Johnson's war on poverty. She urged 9 U.S. senators to visit with low-income families in Mississippi and see for themselves the nation's deep-seated poverty. Over 80% of the Black population in some Mississippi counties was below the poverty line in 1967. So the Senate Subcommittee on Employment, Manpower, and Poverty were invited to come to Mississippi to see for themselves. And Robert Kennedy, Joseph Clark, and Ethel Kennedy made that trip. So 2 of the senators out of the 9. And she took them into people's homes and introduced them to people, and they saw the level of poverty. It was Robert Kennedy who suggested to her and her fellow activists, get a whole lot of poor people who just come to Washington and stay there. She relayed that advice to Martin Luther King Jr. during a staff retreat of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in November 1967. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King announced the Poor People's Campaign as a middle ground between riots on the one hand and timid supplication for justice on the other. So one of the SCLC organizers was Tut Tate, and she thought that they should move the entire town of Marks, Mississippi to Washington to dramatize the conditions. And she got her wish. The mule train, which was one of the regional caravans bringing thousands of participants to Washington. So the mule train from Marks, Mississippi, along with the Eastern Caravan, the Appalachian Trail, the Southern Caravan, the Midwest Caravan, the Indian Trail, the San Francisco Caravan, the Western Caravan, and the Freedom Train. So these covered wagons left Marks. They went all the way to Atlanta on the roads, and they got into various trouble and stopped by cops and whatnot. In Atlanta, they decided that they would just get on the Amtrak with their wagons and get to DC that way. But they did come to DC and went through to Resurrection City in their mule trains. The mule and the covered wagons were a symbolic message of the Black sharecropper. And you cannot talk about the 1968 campaign without talking about Johnny Tillman. She was in the National Welfare Rights Organization, which had 10,000 dues-paying welfare-receiving members in over 100 chapters. So Martin Luther King came on down to try and recruit the National Welfare Rights Organization to be part of the campaign. And Etta Horn asked Dr. King about his position on the recent passage of anti-welfare legislation. His answer revealed his unfamiliarity with the fight around welfare that these women had been waging for years. Johnny, who was then the national chairwoman of the NWRO, stepped in. You know, Dr. King, if you don't know about these questions, you should just say you don't know, and then we could get on with the meeting. Dr. King replied, "We don't know anything about welfare. We're here to learn." So Johnny Tillman helped work out the major elements of the platform of the Poor People's Campaign of 1968. And just to let you know her a little better, she wrote a manifesto in 1972, which said, among other things, "I'm a woman. I am a Black woman. I'm a poor woman. I'm a fat woman. I'm a middle-aged woman, and I'm on welfare. In this country, if you are any of those things, you count less as a human being. If you're all of those things, you don't count at all." But Johnny Tillman counted. She was amazing. And she saw welfare as a woman's issue. So the National Welfare Rights Organization organized a march for the Mother's Day inauguration of the Poor People's Campaign, and Coretta Scott King, Johnny Tillman, and Ethel Kennedy led thousands through poor neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. for the Mother's Day March. And 3,000 people marched in the rain, with about 6,000 at the ending rally. During the rally at Cardozo High School Stadium at the end of the march, Coretta Scott King called for reform of social services funding, noting that Congress passed laws which subsidize corporate farms, oil companies, airlines, and houses for suburbs, but was unwilling to make similar investments in programs to help the poor. This disparity in the distribution of government funds became a theme of the Poor People's Campaign and still is today. Margaret A. Dodson Turner was an educator in DC, and she joined the campaign to teach the kids because people brought their families. You know, Dr. King had said, "Come to Resurrection City, we're going to have all the things." Resurrection City had its own zip code, a mayor, Jesse Jackson, you might have heard of him, a city council, a finance committee, and a public relations center. There was a daily newspaper, songbooks, free meals, and health and social services. There were educational opportunities that ranged from Miss Dodson Turner's Child Care Center to a Poor People's University, with ongoing seminars and lectures to cultural activities at the Soul Center. Dodson Turner went on to become a senior development officer for the Smithsonian's new National Museum of African American History and Culture. So she has had quite a career. And Jill Friedman, if we were in person, I would pass around this amazing coffee table book. She was a photographer, and when Martin Luther King was assassinated, she quit her job and joined a caravan and went to Resurrection City. She published a book in 1971, and in order to show you some of her pictures, I'm going to play a video of her exhibit at the African American Museum. She has her facts wrong. There aren't just 4 caravans. There were 9 caravans, as I mentioned earlier. But hey, you get to see some of her lovely, amazing photos of just the regular people of Resurrection City.
Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. And before this campaign fails, we all go down in jail. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. And before this campaign fails, we all go down in jail. Everybody.
I have a dream that one day.
And when they murdered Dr. King, I was very angry. I quit my job and became one of the Poor People's Campaign. We marched there from 4 parts of the country. There were 4 caravans that descended on Washington, and there we built the plywood shack city, which we called Resurrection City, right there in the Reflecting Pond Mall between Abraham Lincoln and the Washington Memorial. The goal was to make visible the fact that there were many people in this country without decent clothes, without decent housing, without jobs. In our city, everyone had one job, which was to go out and demonstrate, to be seen, to try to reach a deaf government, that they had to see that there were people in this country willing to work and caring about each other, caring about others, and where they were not going to go away. For me, it was about human rights and dignity and respect. And I tried to capture that. What I tried to capture were all the little moments. Every day when we went out and demonstrated, we sang, "Ain't gonna let no billy clubs turn me around, oh no, around, oh Lordy, turn me around." They nailed him. And that one always gets to me because there is a defiant sign of victory behind a locked door. This old lady was from Atlanta, and she was a long-time activist. And the cops had just beaten up a few people, and she was yelling, "You bullies, you thugs, shame on you," when these men came and said, "It's all right, Granny," and led her away. "We'll take care of you." It rained all the time, and we lived in a river of mud. The walkways were these little, duck boards that were often submerged. And the thing is, kids will have fun. They'll find a way to play with everything. This is my Mark Twain picture. Adela Thompson, I love her portrait. She was always my queen. And this was a guy just off by himself for a quiet moment playing the flute. When I read these comments and I see that I have reached some people, I've done my job.
And so her book is really beautiful. When we're all back in person, I'd be happy to pass it around. So next is Maddie Grinnell. She was an organizer with the PPC and the American Friends Service Committee. She spoke, organized, and went to Congress. This is a picture of her speaking in front of the Supreme Court. She was 101 years old at the time, and she lived to 108. As a result of her lobbying in the '68 Poor People's Campaign, she got her Civil War widow's pension, which I think is just kind of an amazing story. And Ethel Kennedy, she went with her husband to Mississippi. She helped lead the Mother's Day March opening the campaign. When Senator Kennedy was assassinated in LA, she made sure his funeral procession passed through Resurrection City so that the people of Resurrection City could say farewell, because he was such a champion of their cause. And she wrote a letter to Coretta Scott King expressing her sisterhood. So Ethel took up some of RFK's causes, battling poverty in particular, linking arms with farm worker Cesar Chavez, and establishing the Robert F. Kennedy Center for Justice and Human Rights. And of course, Coretta Scott King. In an interview after her husband's death, Miss King was asked, "Tell me what you think about violence now that you've been a victim of violence." And she said, "Violence is far more than my husband's assassination. Poverty is violence." And she said, "Since women have been entrusted with the sacred task of giving birth and rearing children, transmitting the values of the cultural heritage of the nation, we have a special commitment at this time to nurture, protect, and save their lives from destruction." She gave the keynote address for the Solidarity Rally at the Poor People's Campaign, and her speech was about an hour long, but I have excerpted 4 minutes just to give you a flavor. There were 50,000 people, and here are some of the things she said.
It is fitting and proper that we come again to the Lincoln Memorial, this symbolic and historic spot where we have come several times before to present our case to the President, to the Congress of the United States, and to the American people. We are here because we feel a frightful sense of urgency to rectify the long-standing evils and injustices in our society: racism, poverty, and war. The Poor People's Campaign was conceived by my late husband, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., as America's last chance to solve these problems nonviolently. The sickness of racism, the despair of poverty, and the hopelessness of war have served to deepen the hatred, heighten the bitterness, increase the frustration, and further alienate the poor in our society. The rumblings of discontent from the disinherited, downtrodden, and dispossessed of our society have finally become united around the issue of poverty. The least of these, God's children, have been ill-housed, ill-fed, deprived of adequate jobs and educational opportunities, and barred from full participation in the political life of this nation. They have come to Washington seeking to better their conditions, and in so doing, they are dramatizing this nation and to the world the desperateness of their plight. In a nation so rich in natural resources and material wealth, the richest nation in the world, a nation founded on the principles of justice and equality for all, some 30 million of its citizens are denied access to the wealth that surrounds them. I'm speaking of the American Indians, the Mexican Americans, the Puerto Ricans, Black Americans, and the white poor, who all live below the poverty line. Too long have we uttered pious platitudes and made faulty promises to our less fortunate brothers. Our destiny is tied up with their destiny, and we are being forced to place the issues where they belong, squarely on the conscience of the American people. All of the problems we face in trying to build a community and a nation of brotherhood, which we need desperately, can be attributed to what I call the triple evils of our time: racism, poverty, and war. All three of these evils can be reduced to violence. We can therefore say that violence is the disease which threatens to destroy the basic fabric of which our society is woven. The undergirding fabric of love, understanding, justice, and peace.
So there were obviously setbacks, assassinations, political violence, and difficulties in sustaining a national movement in 1968. But the Poor People's Campaign had an impact, not only on government policies, but also on public perceptions. The campaign pushed Congress and federal agencies to allocate millions for programs such as Head Start and education and welfare services for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, while it also helped catalyze the desegregation of schools and the extension of labor programs. Significantly, the campaign introduced new strategies for protest and social change. The movement also helped transform national discussions on race, class, economic opportunities, security, and democracy. And now I'm going to move forward to the modern campaign. And these are the women that I will be lifting up for us. On December 4th, 2017, the 50th anniversary of the announcement of the Poor People's Campaign, a diverse leadership came together in Washington, D.C. to launch the new Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, co-chaired by Reverend Dr. William J. Barber II of Repairers of the Breach, and Reverend Dr. Liz Theo-Harris of the Kairos Center, with the support of many organizations, denominations, and individuals now in 45 states across the country. The campaign launched with two primary goals: change the narrative by changing the narrator. That means putting more focus on who and why people are poor and amplifying the voices of those most impacted by the systemic forces that keep people in poverty. Build power to change policy through a fusion movement that unites communities and partner organizations like us. So Reverend Dr. Liz Theo-Harris is the director of the Kairos Center for Religions, Rights, and Social Justice at Union Theological Seminary. She came to the PPC from a career of working on poverty issues. Her book, Always With Us, What Jesus Really Said About the Poor. Jesus' words, the poor you will always have with you, Matthew 26:11, are regularly used to suggest that ending poverty is impossible, that poverty is the result of moral failures, and that the poor themselves have no role in changing their situation. In her book, Reverend Theo-Harris examines both the biblical text and the lived reality of the poor to show that passage is taken out of context, distorted, and politicized to justify theories about the inevitability of inequality. I'm going to share a video clip from the 2019 Moral Budget presentation at the U.S. Congressional Budget Committee. She is responding to Senator Bill Johnson, Republican of Ohio, who says that he doesn't see anywhere in the Bible that it is Caesar's job to feed the poor. I know everyone watching our delegation on the big screen back at the PPC Moral Congress gasped when he said that. He characterized himself and the U.S. government as Caesar and lifted up the false narrative that poverty is a personal failing rather than a systemic problem. And this is in part what Reverend Dr. Theo-Harris said back to him.
So I just want to start by saying I'm stunned that basically we've had unanimous acknowledgement that poverty is widespread across this country. We have pulled a group of testifiers who are deeply personally impacted by these problems. They are in the room, and people are not talking to them.
Oh.
People are not asking questions about how are we going to solve this problem of homelessness and an increased rate of evictions. And then people are being blamed for the problems that this society has caused. How is it that you can say the war on poverty failed when it is politicians who defunded that war? How can you say that Head Start is a personal charity when it has lifted 65 million children out of poverty since it was started? So it feels very important to me to say we need a real, serious conversation in this country. That's right. Led by those that are most impacted. And I love this question of, does the Bible say anything about what nations, what Caesars are supposed to do? Because Matthew 25 says, I was hungry to the nations, not to a church, not to a charity, not to an individual. I was hungry. And what did your nation do? I was homeless. And did you cut public housing? Or did you start building new public housing? I was homeless. And did you allow banks to be bailed out? But families who owe more on their houses than they're worth to become homeless. That's right. We have a moral crisis in this country. It is a crisis when 250,000 people can die every year because of poverty. And people in this committee can admit that in your towns there are people hurting. Well, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? No. And when we talk about housing subsidies, we heard the power of them. You got a loan. Yeah. You were able to get a house. That is government helping out. You were on food programs. That is the government helping out. We need more of these programs. We need to lift wages. How is it possible that in this country there's not one county where if you're working minimum wage, you can afford a 2-bedroom apartment?
Reverend,
so we got to connect this housing and this poverty and these wages and lift the load of poverty.
So anyway, this is awesome. I love that speech. And when we were watching from the Moral Congress, we were just stunned. And our delegation was so good. So my next woman of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, is the Reverend A. Casimir Brown. She's a national director of religious affairs at Repairs of the Breach and co-director of the PPC Prophetic Council, which is all these faith leaders across the nation belong to the Prophetic Council. I think we're in the tens of thousands at this point on the Prophetic Council. Reverend Kaz learned a Bachelor of Science in Sociology and Political Science from Santa Clara University and a Master's of Public Policy from UC Berkeley and her MDiv from Yale Divinity School. She was a political appointee in the Obama-Biden administration, working as a budget analyst. Working with the PPC allows her to combine her policy background and her faith. And I love this quote. Fighting ecological devastation requires that we go beyond a merely scientific understanding of the crisis. When we give the facts a human face, casting a light on the experiences of those afflicted daily, we can't help but recognize these consequences as a tangible injustice. And if you watched our Moral Monday some months ago when the broadcast was from Cancer Alley, it's amazing. There are many human faces who are being affected by ecological devastation, and that's why that's one of our interlocking injustices. And of course, in the campaign, we need music. Music feeds the soul of social justice movements. It inspires us, motivates us, and challenges us to take the next step forward to a more just society. Yara Allen is a singer-songwriter and one of the theomusicology directors of the campaign. I'm going to share a video of her song, Somebody's Hurtin' My Brother, as she taught it at the 2019 Congress.
This song that we're about to learn is a song that's entitled Somebody's Hurting My Brother. Now this song was actually born in a town hall meeting around coal ash. And the meeting came about because Duke Energy was spilling coal ash into poor black and brown and poor white neighborhoods. After hearing testimony after testimony of people who were impacted physically and mentally by the coal ash, this song came as an inspiration of those testimonies. Oh, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Tell you it's gone on far too long. Oh, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Yeah, somebody's hurting my sister, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Tell you it's gone on far too long. Somebody's hurting my sister, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Did you hear somebody's poisoning the water, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Tell you it's gone on far too long. Somebody's poisoning the water, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Have you heard somebody wants to build that wall, y'all, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. And we won't be silent anymore. And we won't be silent anymore. Just your voices start clapping, and we won't. And we won't be silent anymore. Last time, all together. And we won't be silent
Okay, Ms. Callie Greer is the tri-chair of the Alabama Poor People's Campaign, but she's an impacted person. She lost her daughter to her son to gun violence and her daughter Venus to breast cancer, for which she could not get treatment because Alabama did not expand Medicaid. Even though many parents have had to bury their children, no parent in America should have to bury their child because they lacked health care. And of course, we had a recent Moral Monday in Bessemer, Alabama at the Amazon warehouse. And she said, the CEO making billions off my poverty, poverty pimping me, poverty pimping us. I said no more to the pimps. I refuse to be sold to the highest bidder. And I want to show you a powerful video that starts with Ms. Greer's wail. If you've seen a longer version of this wail, it is astoundingly moving. But then she talks. She's a strong voice in the campaign. She's an amazing, amazing person. I'm so proud to be among the women of the campaign with folks like this in the mix.
That's what the nation ought to hear. Her daughter died because Alabama refused to expand Medicaid.
I will not be quiet. I'm the town crier. I will cry out loud in every store, factory, shop, and mall. Venus discovered a small lump in her breast, and she wasn't insured. And she went to the ER in Montgomery. They gave her some meds and sent her home. This became routine for Venus. On February the 22nd, 2013, Venus came in the living room and said, "Mama, my head is hurting me so bad I can hardly see." She was in tears. We rushed her to the cancer center, And they called an ambulance and took her to the emergency room for the last time. So I charge you to march, vote, plant your seeds in good ground so that this good work can reap a good harvest.
We must say, this is not right. This is not moral.
The people who are hurting the most have linked up to say, we won't be silent anymore.
Okay, Reverend Sarah Monroe. I met Reverend Monroe at the BBC Moral Congress in 2019. She was one of the people who was leading the interfaith track. And I was very impressed with her work with the unhoused community, especially with homeless veterans. And so this is a very short clip where she talks about Grace Harbor County in Washington. People are caught in a constant struggle to survive, and we support our community in leading feeding programs and organizing for human rights and dignity in a county where nearly 50% of the population is poor.
I grew up in Grace Harbor County. It's home for me, and I've always had a deep love for this place and for its people. When I came back to Grace Harbor, I was surprised to see the number of millennials on the street, the number of people in my generation who are experiencing homelessness. We live in a community and really in a nation where people are blamed for their own poverty. The most important thing that we can do is give people a sense of personal dignity.
Again, another amazing leader in the Poor People's Campaign. And here's another theomusicologist. Okay, I admit it, as a raging granny and a lifelong vocalist, I am so attracted to the theomusicology part of our campaign. Sharon Hreber, who uses doctor, she does has an MDiv, so she could be reverend too, but she doesn't go that way, is the director of cultural strategies at the Kairos Center. She serves as co-coordinator of theomusicology and movement arts for the campaign. She's the lead vocalist in this version of Everybody's Got a Right to Live by the New York City PPC from last year's blitz of all the versions, and so I'm going to share that one.
Everybody has got a right. Everybody has got a right. Everybody has got a right. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody has got a right. Everybody has got a right. Everybody has got a right. Everybody's got a right to live.
I feel this melody in the footsteps of the people, rising up in the rhythm of dignity and courage. When I see you, I suddenly believe liberation can flourish, and generosity and humility will save us. And we will use the love our mamas gave us to decolonize the skies above us with praises. Learning from the bravest, the beautiful, nameless creators of a world newly awakened. We on fire and blazing our way out the matrix, guided by a single mother's hand, holding her family together. We already on the other side of never. Where the aunties brewing tea and sipping sweetness from the south to the north. We are here to remind those in D.C. who they working for. That's right, beloved. This song is Freedom Uncovered.
Everybody has got a right. Everybody has got a right. Everybody has got a right. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody has got a right.
what Harriet walked towards, what the people in Selma marched for, what the riots from Stonewall to Ferguson to Minneapolis fought for. A movement of people who pour in dollars but rich in brilliance. We are the millions, the healers who come to heal, the leaders who come to reveal that the right to live means you've had the right to feel what you feel. The right to live means an end to police violence and the passage of a Green New Deal. The right to live is in the wind, and every day we witness in our children's countless talents. The right to live is harmonizing in the voice of Yara Allen. It is the springtime and you can feel the right to live about to bloom, growing out the organizing of comrades like Sierra and Sharon and Claudia de la Cruz. Esto es el momento de pararnos como madres orgullosas y sonreír, porque no hay nada más esencial que el derecho de vivir. The right to live is a simple truth to return us to ourselves. It is a spell being cast upon a lost and divided nation to heal the wounds of hate and incarceration with a love so bold it includes everybody. Feel that, everybody. And when you fight for those rights, they become the lights for us to follow through these long dark nights. This is a promise to be radically honest and declare we are worthy of food to eat and housing to sleep in and schools to dream in and just being human beings. We are worthy of love. And so the Poor People's Campaign has come to bring our freedom into being. You will know we've arrived because you will hear us sing.
Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live.
Okay, and my last woman of the Poor People's Campaign in the modern era is Dorothy Van Soest, our WILPF liaison. She attends National PPC Mobilizing Partners meetings and sends out information on our WILPF for PPC email list and is on the Washington PPC Coordinating Committee. Our previous liaison was Mary Bricker Jenkins, who was involved with Moral Mondays in North Carolina before the PPC was even formed. I wrote her, but I didn't hear back, or I'd have featured her too, even though that would be two WILPF women. They're us. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the current work of the Poor People's Campaign, like this week work of the Poor People's Campaign, and how to get involved. On May 24th, there was a Third Reconstruction resolution introduced by Representative Barber Lee and Representative Pramila Jayapal. And it's amazing that it relies so heavily on the work of the Poor People's Campaign, and it lays out a comprehensive vision for eradicating poverty and tackling racial and economic inequality. First, we changed our website. You see the TRD Reconstruction there, thirdreconstruction.org is now our current website rather than poorpeoplescampaign.org. The latest info on registering for June 21st rather, and taking part in spreading the word is all on thirdreconstruction.org now. And after the resolution was introduced to Congress, we had actions, over 50 actions in 30 states asking for congressional representatives to sign on as co-signers, and there are about 30 co-signers at this point. 4 actions were in the Bay Area. They went to Barbara Lee's office in Oakland, where they thanked her for having started the ball rolling, to Nancy Pelosi's office in San Francisco, Jackie Spears' office in San Mateo, and Zoe Lofgren's office in San Jose, asking them, will you please sign on to this? This photo, of course, is from our San Jose action. Representative Lofgren's chief of staff met with us and accepted our documents. And because it's me, here is another video from the campaign about our current Third Reconstruction action.
We are in one of those moments that demand a poor people's campaign.
Our brothers and sisters are sleeping on the streets. For a country this rich to have so many people poor, it's immoral and it's wrong.
When we throw away more food than it takes to feed every person, not just that's hungry in this country, but around the world, that is not right.
Something is wrong.
That is a moral emergency, and that's why we need a poor people's campaign.
There's other systems here that are oppressing us that voting won't always fix, and that we've got to talk about, we've got to call it out, and we've got to mobilize and build a movement to be able to change these things that our politicians won't always change.
But if you don't recognize us, and then it goes back to that second chapter, that we're the forgotten ones.
Until we are ready to keep this fight going.
Because it's crucial that we make ourselves heard.
Let the people vote! That's how you honor veterans.
When you hold down the poor, you hold down America.
Our backs are against the wall, and we got no choice but to push.
We are building a multiracial, intergenerational, nonviolent army of the poor that will break every chain. Every chain.
And so we have to come to a point that every attack on the poor will embolden our agitation. Every attack on sick folk will embolden our agitation. Every attack on immigrants will embolden our agitation.
We can do more. We can do better. And we're building the power. Forward together. Not one step back.
We want health care. We're not lazy. We work. We work. That's right. We want a living wage. We want unions. We want health care. We want just what basic people need.
Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to dream.
I'm ready to fight. I am tired.
Where we're going to keep on making this holy trouble, keep on defending our democracy, keep on speaking for voting rights and for health care and for living wages and for everything that everybody in this society needs to thrive.
It's time to get it right here and right now. Yeah. No racist superiority is ever greater than the rights of humanity.
Our country now stands at a tipping point. We can realize a third reconstruction to fully address poverty and low wages from the bottom up.
We all must embrace this omnibus vision of third reconstruction. No democracy can claim to be strong when 140 million people, or 43% of its people, are poor and low wealth. That's talking about 52% of children under 18, 39 million children. That's 41% of elders above 65, 21 million. That's 42.6% of men, that's 65 million. That's 45% of women, 74 million. That's 60% of black people, 26 million. That's 64% of Latinos, 38 million. That's 40% of Asian people, 8 million. That's 59% of Native Indigenous people, that's 2.1 million. And that's 33.5% of white people, that's 66 million white people. Before the pandemic ever hit, according to a study at Columbia University, 250,000 people a year died from the pandemic of poverty, 750 people a day.
We have the solutions. They're right here. They're right here in this third Reconstruction resolution. And so we must build the political will, the compelling power, the resolve to lift from the bottom.
This is a moral issue rooted in the commitments of our Constitution, that the first thing we swear to is to establish justice, promote the general welfare, and to ensure equal protection under the law. This is a moral agenda, but a moral agenda from my faith tradition. Morality is not just folk coming together and singing we love each other. It is coming together by the Spirit, building a community where there is no lack. So a moral agenda is also a sound economic agenda.
Today we say to poor people, Mr. Speaker, we see you and we will eradicate poverty in our country with you.
It's movement time. It's time to shake this nation, because this nation is locked up.
Rise up. Rise up. Rise up.
Get up tomorrow and start the revolution.
So that's our current video, entreating you to join us in the campaign to write your representatives and say, co-sign the resolution. And we're having this amazing digital mass poor peoples and low wage workers assembly in Raleigh, North Carolina, and online this year. Next year, we're going to go to DC. We said we were going to go last year, and then the pandemic hit, but for sure, next year, June 18th, 2022, March on Washington. So we're over 100 days into our 500 days of fighting forward. You can register at the thirdreconstruction.org website. In the meantime, we've been counting down and we've been having actions every day. So I thought I would tell you what our current actions are. Today was Selfie Day. If you go to thirdreconstruction.org and scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, there's a selfie tool. And you can either take a picture with your computer and it will use that, or you can upload a picture if you have a picture of yourself that you really like, and then you post about why you're joining us on Monday. And I've spent my day okaying people's selfies to go on the website. Tomorrow is a Twitter storm. Tweet all day. There's content from the digital toolkit on the thirdreconstruction.org website, and we're going to take Twitter by storm. And on Sunday, text your friends and family, call or text 5 family or friends and say, hey, join us on Monday. And then, of course, on Monday, there will be a digital Zoom room where we can watch together and amplify content across various platforms. That's what I'll be doing. I'm one of the hosts for partners, and we'll be welcoming PPC partners. There's sample tweets, there's a selfie tool, there's information and toolkit on thirdreconstruction.org. So please join us in getting the word out. And of course, there's the normal ways to join us. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, and work with us in our local working groups. I have a document with all of this information on it, and perhaps I can get Joan to share it out with folks in our branch so that you won't have to screenshot this slide, although of course that's always a possibility. And in the campaign, we say forward together and folks respond, not one step back. So if you want to unmute and chant with me, I'm going to say forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Thank you. And if you want to donate and support the movement, this is the information. You can support the California PPC tax deductibly through our fiscal sponsor, Environmentalism Through Inspiration and Nonviolent Action at TINA, through that website link. And if you want to support the national campaign, the information is on the poorpeoplescampaign.org website, and you can have a one-time or a recurring donation and support the campaign. And that is the end of my presentation. Are there any questions?
Okay, you know how to give applause. Woohoo!
You were great.
Rowan, all right, questions and well, this is great. All right, super. How about questions for Rowan? I see Shirley.
I was wondering why they didn't just keep the Poor People's Campaign website, because most people know it that way.
That's a mystery to me. It was a decision by National, and I think if you look at it, the design is really different. I'm not sure they could have integrated what they did for Third Reconstruction into the existing website. And they also mean it to be sort of a one-stop shop. You go to that page, you register for Monday, it gives you all the toolkit information, and it has a copy of the a link to a copy of the resolution. Mm-hmm. I really don't know what they'll do going forward, but that's what we're using at the moment for planning things around Monday.
Mm-hmm. Well, I used to share the old website, and I guess I'll have to remember the new one.
Yeah. And I saw Virginia's hand. Virginia.
Yes. Rowan, that was fantastic. My question is, how can we clone you?
Oh, thank you. That's really kind. I don't think there's a way to do that. But I'm working currently on a deck for the 68 campaign because we took most of the history out of our Welcome sessions. And so I was able to sort of cherry pick the women out of my 68 campaign thing. So watch this space or some other space, and I will continue doing presentations because I really love the Poor People's Campaign.
You're great.
Other questions and comments? You know, this is a good time for questions and comments.
What does a third reconciliation?
It's reconstruction. So the first Reconstruction was right after the Civil War. And it failed because of racist Southerners mostly, violence and the Ku Klux Klan and whatnot. And the second Reconstruction was in the 1960s, what we're talking about, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, all that stuff. And that failed, as we saw, due to assassinations and political violence. And so what we're saying is now it's time for a third Reconstruction.
Okay.
Let's finish the job this time.
Good.
Okay. Other comments and questions? Either just raise your hand or make a comment.
So this is Nell, and I want to just appreciate you, Reverend Rowan, because, you know, I learned a lot. There was, you know, a lot of women who I really did not know and didn't know their stories and didn't know the detail, even for some of the women who I did know. So thank you for that. And thank you for bringing the women's voices forward, because there's a way that, I mean, you know, patriarchy and sexism is like a real thing. And Christian hegemony is in that too. And so, you know, with women's voices, we're taken for granted, basically. And it's just expected that we'll make a contribution and not get any credit, not be recognized. And so thank you for shifting that narrative.
Thank you.
And how about other questions, comments? There is a way in the Bay Area to get involved, and I think both Nell and Rowan are involved in the Bay Area. Is that correct?
And Virginia also.
And Virginia, okay. So
she's one of our theomusicologists.
Right. So tell us a little bit about getting involved if we're in the Bay Area, a little more in the Bay Area.
Can I shift that to you, Nell?
Sure, I'll start, and then the two others of you can chip in. So we are doing hybrid. I mean, most of what we do is still online, and that'll continue to be true because the Bay Area, you know, is 9 counties. And so the idea that we're ever all gonna come from all those different places to be in one place, it would be for a special occasion, but not just a regular kind of ongoing, you know, monthly meeting. And so you're welcome to join us for some of the working groups that we have, including there is a faith leader working group that does a lot of connecting congregations to the Poor People's Campaign. And there is a legal working group, which is a statewide working group that you don't have to be a lawyer to attend, but one of the things that the campaign basically focuses on the Congress, the state houses, and the courts, because our work is about changing the policies. And we recognize that those are the kind of the linchpins basically for the policies that impoverish people and hold us in poverty. And so there is a legal working group that has a focus on what is the role of the legal community in challenging the interlocking injustices. And then again, we're a state-based campaign. And so we have some working groups that are focused in the Bay Area, like the Art and Theomusicology working group that I'm going to ask Virginia to talk about. But there are some working groups that are statewide. And so the legal working group is one of those. And then we have a policy and political education working group that's also statewide. And we have that working group is focused on, right now, it's once a month, we have a Jubilee Platform study group where we are taking the time to read through the policy recommendations that have been developed by the campaign based on what impacted people say needs to happen to change, to end poverty. So Reverend Rowan, I want to ask you to talk about the speaker training working group after Virginia talks about the art and musicology.
Well, arts and musicology, as is very clear from Reverend Rowan's presentation, is a huge part of the movement. It's very inspirational. I'm looking at the signs behind both Rowan and Nell probably were made by some of the people involved in the arts and theomusicology group. You don't really have to have talent, you just have to have desire. And there'll be somebody present at each action or each preparation for action that shows those present what to do. It's usually done as kind of well, one person does part of it and another group does another part, but the instructions are very clear that even people with very little talent can feel wonderful because we create beautiful work with just putting together one person's talent with one person's availability and willingness. All around the nation, when we have actions from the Poor People's Campaign, you'll see these beautiful artwork that say so much in terms of what the movement is. People don't have to be able to hear, they can just look at those signs and know what we stand for. And then the theomusicology, I think Reverend Rowan's presentation also underscored how important that is. It's important because it brings people together, it inspires, it educates, and anyone can be a part who wants to. And we're just in the beginning stages of forming a musical group, choir, starting off by bringing together people who want to sing, and then we'll see where it goes from there. We want to have people available to go and sing at various actions when that is needed. And most of what's needed is just a desire to be a part. So it's been great for me to be a part of the Poor People's Campaign, and you are certainly welcome to join in.
Yeah, many of the women in our branch did letters for the Everybody's Got a Right to Live signs last year.
Yes.
So we're part of the arts and theomusicology group. And of course, many of us are raging grannies, so singing is our jam. We go to all the protests and sing. That's what we do.
I loved your take on the songs that we sang here today.
Thank you. So the other working group that Nell asked me to talk about is the speaker training working group. We grew out of the faith leaders working group because in the lead up to June 2020 last year, we had so many requests for speakers, and the faith leaders were sort of fielding all of them and going to different organizations and congregations. And we said, this can't be part of our job. Let's spin off a working group that's meant to not just go out and do speaks, but also help people find their sea legs and be able to go out and do speaks at various organizations as well. And then we decided that it was our job to work on a welcome session that, people were getting interested in the campaign, and how do we tell them to get involved? Well, one of the ways is that the first Tuesday of the month at 3:30, we have a welcome session that grew out of a PowerPoint deck, very much like this one, although now it's a Google slide deck. And some of the things that I show tonight will be familiar because we usually play that Everybody's Got the Right to Live song from New York City, because I love it so much. But we're getting to where the people from the original Speakers Training Working Group aren't the ones doing the monthly welcome session. So we are getting people involved in the campaign and able to navigate the welcome session and hopefully feel confident enough to go out to groups that they're associated with and give talks about the campaign. And we have tools and templates and ways to support them in doing that. I know we're leaving somebody outreach, which outreaches to organizations of all kinds, as opposed to the faith leaders who tend to reach out to congregations.
Then there's a COVID benefits access.
That's right.
That was formed, obviously, not too long ago. And it has a few components. And so it really is our effort to help people get the resources that are available that they may not know about or can't quite figure out how to access. And so it is the URL is getcovidresources.org. And so you can go there and click on it, and then it gives you a choice between unemployment benefits, food bank, child tax credit, and the vaccine, helping people have access to vaccine who are having trouble. And so I want to just say that the child tax credit, for those of you who are caregivers, have grandchildren, or know other people who have children between 0 and 17, the federal child tax credit is now fully refundable. And so there has been a federal child tax credit since, I think, the late 1990s. But if you can believe this, and you probably can, if you were too poor, you didn't qualify, right? So you had to be a tax filer, which, some people are so poor that they don't have to file taxes. And so they were excluded, which is like, well, we all know where we are. And so long story short, in the stimulus package, they made it fully refundable and for a year. And so we're doing everything we can to get the word out so that people know about it. And you can file if you don't file taxes, they created a portal that we're hoping they will improve, because it's supposed to make it easy for people who don't file taxes to access that benefit. And if you know folks who are undocumented, but they have an ITI number and have a child or children with Social Security numbers, they're eligible, unlike some other benefits that if you are undocumented, you're not eligible, you're excluded. So yeah, we're doing everything we can to help get the word out about that through the Benefits Access Working Group, and the Policy and Political Education Working Group develop materials for distribution, including a door hanger and a flyer.
So I asked the question about how to get involved because I know there's so much happening in the state. And I also want to give a shout out. 6 months ago, I attended the Jubilee Platform Study Group once, maybe twice, highly recommended. And also the speaker training. Now, if you really want to know more about what the Poor People's Campaign is about, go to one of these. Because they're the places to get educated. I mean, it was wonderful, Rowan, what you did. But I don't know about others, but I feel like I kind of know, but I kind of don't. So I just really encourage people. It's a wonderful place to both learn about something that matters and develop your skills. Now, who doesn't love a combo like that? So I just want to give a shout out to these programs.
Thank you, Paula.
How about other questions, other comments? Anybody else? Joan, yes, Joan, unmute and.
Yes. Okay, so a lot of good things here. Is it just me, or are we not saying how to find these California groups? How to be in touch, how to learn about them, how to connect with them. They all sound wonderful.
Well, I don't have a link to the feedback form, but if you come to one of our first Tuesday welcome sessions, there will be a feedback form that you fill out with what your interests are, and somebody will contact you and help you figure out how best to get connected.
So and how do we know how to get to it? To that thing that you just mentioned. What's the website?
Well, if you sign up on poorpeoplescampaign.org, you'll be on our Action Network mailing list. And we send out things via Action Network, locally or statewide, depending on what the thing is. And there's a statewide newsletter that comes out every week that is amazing and has all kinds of information that will help you get connected. So
okay, so it's poorpeoplescampaign.org/committee/California is what I'm getting from a website, from a search, you know, from a search engine or whatever you call them. Is there some
and
better?
I think you can also write info at California@poorpeoplescampaign.org.
There we go.
Yeah.
Email.
So email California@poorpeoplescampaign.org and ask to be put on the mailing list.
Rowan, is there a Facebook group, or?
I put up the links to the national, state, local Facebook groups in that sheet. I'm going to have Joan send the info card to everybody, and you will all then have the information on how to contact us on every social media out there practically. I didn't do any Instagram, but Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, and it also has a list of the committees. So
and email perhaps?
I'm sorry?
And also email as well as the social.
Yeah. It has how to contact us. It's the current info card for the Bay Area campaign.
There was so much on that piece of information that I couldn't get it all. So I'm glad it was there. Thank you. Sorry.
Sure. All right. We're coming to the end of our time. All right. I want to make sure that everybody had a chance to make a comment. So we, Michael and Laurie and Penny, Portia and Amy and Julia, did you want to contribute anything? I'm just opening it up, make sure.
Well, I just want to say that I heard that on the web, I guess an email, that you could do texting this weekend about Monday. And I'm going to do a little bit of that.
Yep, we have text banks every day, you bet.
Yay, Amy.
Hey, Amy, you're good at that. How about other comments? Penny, Portia, Penny, do you want to say something?
I like the meetings on the Monday meetings. I like to go to those. I don't know much about what meetings are going on for the Third Reconstruction, but I'll keep listening to hear about what's happening with that.
Great.
Yeah, this Monday, instead of being at noon, the way that most of them has been, it will be at 2:30 our time. 2:30. The assembly. So
okay.
I signed
just FYI. One of the recent ones was also at a different time, so it's good to pay attention to what time National is scheduling things.
I really appreciate that it's called Reconstruction and not Revolution, because revolution is war, and war hurts everyone. We don't want any more war. It takes a lot of self-discipline, though, just to do Reconstruction, but I think it's really important.
Thank you.
Thank you for that thought. That's awesome, Julia.
Others, Michael and Laurie?
We're good. Thank you for the invitation, but appreciate what you're doing. No questions or comments right now. And thanks so much, Reverend Rowan, for the presentation.
Thank you for showing up. I appreciate it.
Okay.
And I just want to deeply appreciate Rowan for stepping up. The timeliness of this is wonderful. It's a very timely program, and I think it's coming from North Carolina on Monday, the Poor People's Campaign, where the Poor People's Campaign originated, I don't know, some 4 or 5 years ago as a rise up. Maybe it was longer than that, when North Carolina became a one-party state in their legislative branch. And so there's been a lot of WILPFers there that have been active, and a lot of other people engaged in social justice issues. So Rowan, do you have anything else you want to say?
Nope. Oh. Let's sing them out.
Question.
We close our WILF meetings with the grannies singing again. So don your either real or your yes or your pretend hat. Everyone
Surely.
For the first one, Rowan will be is leading us. So mute yourself and follow. I'll share. Whoops, let me share the screen.
That's right.
You got to have the words. Here are the words. There's the words. And
so this is the Poor People's Campaign, Time for a Moral Revival to the tune Acre of Clams, lyrics by Vicki Ryder for the Raging Grannies. There's something that's troubling the grannies, so we toss and we turn late at night, wondering why there are so many hungry in a land that's so rich that ain't right. It's time for a moral revival, so we've joined the Poor People's Campaign to end poverty in our nation. We've joined the Poor People's Campaign. The government spends all our taxes for killing in wars far away. But we grannies say give our kids books, not bombs, and the kids' teachers fair pay. It's time for a moral revival, so we've joined the Poor People's Campaign to end senseless wars across the planet. We've joined the Poor People's Campaign. They're drilling and fracking and dumping to fatten their wallets, you see. And we don't really care if they live or die. It's enough to make Mother Earth weep. Now it's time for a moral revival, so we've joined the Poor People's Campaign to stop them from poisoning our planet. We've joined the Poor People's Campaign. Equality for all the people, they say, is the law of the land. But our system is blatantly racist, so together for justice we'll stand. And it's time for a moral revival, so we've joined the Poor People's Campaign. And together we'll pick up the torch and work for the National Poor People's Campaign. We're not afraid of their handcuffs. They can lock us in jail if they must. But we grannies won't sit by in silence while they throw us all under the bus. And it's time for a moral revival, so we've joined the Poor People's Campaign. And we're glad all you folks are here with us in the National Poor People's Campaign. It's time for a moral revival, so we've joined the Poor People's Campaign. And we're glad all you folks have joined with us in the National Poor People's Campaign.
all right, that's the Raging Grannies musicology. Thank you, Ron. That's great. And we traditionally close our meetings with when we make peace instead of war. I just want to make note so that we make sure we do make note. Juneteenth is tomorrow. It's a federal holiday now. That's worth celebrating. All right. Let's, here we go. So if you're muted, when we make peace instead of war, when we make peace instead of war, how I want to be in that number when we make peace instead of war, when everyone is fairly treated, when everyone is fairly treated, how I want to be in that number when everyone is fairly treated. When we replace the racist system, when we replace the racist system, how I want to be in that number when we replace the racist system. When streets are safe for all to walk, when streets are safe for all to walk. How I want to be in that number, when streets are safe for all to walk. When neighbors dare to share their truths, when neighbors dare to share their truth. How I want to be in that number, when neighbors dare to share their truth. When we make peace instead of war, when we make peace instead of war. How I want to be in that number, when we make peace instead of war. All right, everyone, unmute yourselves and say hello and greet each other and